Good evening, good evening, good evening, Hornet Highlights series fans. We are here with another Hornet Highlights series edition. And this week we have the incomparable or the inimitable Mrs. Cathleen Trigg-Jones with us. So we are delighted to have you here. And Kathleen, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. First of all, welcome.
Thank
And
you.
you're so welcome. And I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. So I am Cathleen Trigg-Jones. It's an honor to be here with Mr. Frank Burton today. And I am a graduate of Delaware State University. We won't say what class, but it's been a minute since I walked on the yard. And I was a journalism major at Delaware State University. I would like to say I had a little hand in helping to start the mass communications program on campus there. And it's one of the most, prideful things now to see how far that major has come. And I've been a TV journalist and an actress and a businesswoman and entrepreneur for the past, several years since coming out of Hornet's land.
Well, that's awesome, Kathleen. That is awesome. I've been doing a little bit of background on you, and um, you have something that's so very special. Number one, I knew if I allowed you to do your introduction that you'd be pretty humble. Let me give you just a little bit more about Kathleen. She's the founder of iWoman TV. She's a director, a producer, an actress, and a former TV news anchor and reporter. Kathleen has been featured on FBI's Most Wanted, Homeland, Power, Madam Secretary, House of Cards, We Are the Joneses, and even a Tupac Shakur biopic, as well as a myriad of other shows. I just wanted to get that out there because I know she was going to be humble and she really wasn't going to talk about that. But let's talk about something that's very important to you. Tell our viewers about iWoman TV.
Yes, thank you for that lead in because so I have four kids and so I'm a mother, a wife, and all those things. But I always said once my kids left, I needed something to fill my time. And so I gave birth to a movement and she is called iWoman TV. And I absolutely love this initiative that I founded. It's really a culmination of all of my years on camera, behind the camera, running a production company, being a news anchor in multiple markets around the country, being a little politically connected, and bringing all that together. And it has culminated in this movement that I felt really moved, led, compelled to start to empower young women and girls. iWoman TV is a streaming network and a platform, a distribution platform to lift up women, to tell the stories through the lens of women that are needed to change the trajectory for women and girls globally. So I'm putting female writers, producers, directors behind the camera, in front of the camera, creating stories, creating movies, TV shows, films, podcasts. Right now, little plug for iWoman Studios here. We're in Midtown Manhattan, right, in 39th and Park Avenue. I have my own studio here, so I'm in the back in the podcast room, actually, because in my studio, my large studio right now, one of the shows that I created from scratch called it was originally called Street Politicians. We recently rebranded it as TMI, which is
Okay.
Tamika and Myson Information. And Tamika D. Mallory is a huge female activist, civil rights activist. Myson, the general, is her co-host. He's a big rapper. You can look them up. But right now they have Shawnee from Basketball Wives, who is Shaquille O'Neal's ex-wife,
Yes.
here in the studio with her new love and talking about relationships and talking about her new book. And so they're on the other side of me right now in the studio taping a show right now. And that just gives you a window into what I do. I created this show from scratch. It's in its sixth season now.
Wow.
And I've done that with a lot of young women that don't necessarily, they have ideas, they might have a following, they might have the personality and everything, but they don't know how to connect the dots to create an amazing show. And that's where I come in. I support them, I join them, I partner with them, and we just create magic together.
Outstanding. I love the diversity of the show and all the different guests that you have. And it's just incredible to have that platform where everybody can be heard. I want to do something a little bit different really quickly. I want to go back to the beginning. You know my background. We talked briefly. I'm a pastor, and as pastors, we always go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning
Amen.
because we
Let's
got to
have
go
some
back
church
to we
here.
got to go back. Yes, man, we got to go back to where it all started for you. So, um, tell us, Kathleen, where you're from and what it was like growing up.
So you know there's a story. You want to go to the beginning. I'm gonna take you all the way back. I'm gonna
Let's
take you
go.
back. I'm gonna take you back to Dayton, Ohio, in the midst at the in the right in the very middle of the civil rights movement when black and white didn't come together. And I was born in Dayton, Ohio, to a young white woman and a black man. And my mother had been arrested for prostitution. My father was in jail at the time, and I was left at an orphanage in Dayton, Ohio. Fast forward almost 2 years later, a young military couple, who are now my parents, the only parents I've ever known, saw something in me and decided to give me a shot. They decided to take me into their house and their home, give me their name, give me love, give me everything I needed to be successful in life. And most importantly, they gave me a strong foundation, a Southern Baptist military
There you go.
upbringing.
There
So
you go.
I could not step out of line. And it's probably what I needed at that time. And my dad got stationed at Dover Air Force Base, and that's where I grew up in Dover, Delaware, right at Dover Air Force Base. I'm a hometown girl. I went to Dover High School. I went to Delaware State University. And what I would say is, for me at least, Delaware State changed my life because having, coming from what I came from as a child, although I didn't grow up in the system, I very much had the scars from whatever happened to me those first couple of years of my life. By the time my parents adopted me and became my family, that was my fifth placement, and I was not even two yet. So I
Wow.
can only imagine what my life might have been like had I stayed in the system. And I don't for even a second believe that anything I've done was because of just chance. It was 100% God having a plan for my life and deciding that I was going to be something. And he planted these really audacious dreams in me that didn't make sense to anyone in little tiny Dover, Delaware. I would tell people from the time I was 7, I'm going to be in New York one day because I saw New York on TV, never been before. But I would tell them I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to be on stages and everyone's going to know my name. And in Dover at that time, we have internet now. Back then, there was no internet. We had one TV station. We had one, no one believed it. And people thought I was literally crazy. Even my
Yes.
parents, they were like, would you just go to school and stop trying this whole creativity thing that you got going on? Like, can you just focus on school? But that dream, I didn't know why God planted it in me because it was way bigger than the small pond that I was in. I felt like I was a big fish in this little pond and I needed a big pond, an
Yes.
ocean. And but he didn't let it leave me, and it kept me on the straight and narrow. And I found every opportunity I could to be on a stage. At Dell State, I was in plays, and growing up, the Blakeys, I don't know if you remember them, I was in plays with them.
Yes.
Dr. Rhodes from Dell State used to put on plays. I was in those plays. And I eventually got to New York, a different path than I thought. And I'll let you get into my broadcasting career. But I made it and I stayed focused and I never lost sight of the fact that I knew my steps were very ordered and I knew I had a lot to give back to the creator who made it possible for me to follow a dream that no one believed in but me.
Wow. So you answered a lot of the questions that I was going to ask you, but that's fine because we're right on par.
Yeah.
The great
Well, forgive me. I'm a journalist. I'm a TV journalist. So it's hard for me to not like
no,
dominate your interview. So you just shut me up
no,
and
no,
you
no, no,
said,
no,
hey.
no. That you and as a journalist and media person too, you know when you're flowing, you got to let you talk. You got to let you talk
Amen.
because it's helping someone and you're actually leading to some of the things that I would really want to get to. That's going to help the viewers as well because there are a lot of things that the viewers will know about Kathleen Trigg-Jones from television, from the internet, from Google. But you know me, I got some stuff we're gonna talk about that they don't know, which is very important, right? So, but one of
Very
the things that
important.
you said too is, Woody Allen wrote once, he said, if you want to make God laugh, all you have to do is tell him your plans, right? So we have
Mhm.
all these big plans and we do all these big things, But I want to say this to you. When I first met you back at homecoming, back in 2023,
Yeah.
and after just a few brief conversations that I had with you offline afterwards, I could tell, and it was very clear to me, that someone had left an indelible print on you, imprint regarding your faith in Christ. And you already told me it's dad, because that's where I was going to next. But you already told me your family and your
Yeah.
dad, and it's nothing like daddy's little girl. So we know where that comes from, right? Which was the next question. But so let me go into a follow-up question for that. Where does the role, and you kind of said a little bit, but I want you to expound just a little bit more. Where does the role of Jesus Christ play in your success?
Wow. That is so heavy, and I'm going to answer it, in a comedic way, but then I'm going to get a little serious. Jesus and I actually have some real, battles. We talk, and we don't always see eye to eye, and sometimes I have to say yes, but God, you told me, to follow you, and I'm following you, but could you speed it up a little bit? Like,
Yes, yes,
I have to go through this hurdle and that hurdle. Does it have to be so hard? And he always says, trust me. Trust
yes,
me, I did not bring you this far. I will never leave you nor forsake you. And I believe that with everything I have in me. At a young age, my mother grew up in a family of deacons and deaconesses and pastors in Savannah, Georgia. And so she, to this day in Dover, Delaware, she plays the organ and the piano for her church to this day. My mom is
nice,
87 years old. Every Sunday,
nice.
they have choir rehearsal at her house. Sometimes they have church at her house. When during COVID, they would just come to her house and have church. And that's the way that my mother grew up, and that's the way she raised us. She gave me piano lessons. I had to learn hymns. I had to go to Sunday school. I had to, whether we liked it or not, God and Jesus was a part of our life. And you still, once you become an adult, you can pick and choose what to do with that. I'm not going to exactly say that I knew when I was younger that why that foundation was being set for me, but in my life, it is 100% clear to me that my parents were angels that were placed
Right.
in my life to give me a shot, to rescue me from the mess, the firestorm that I was born in, because it could have gone either way for me in life. And I mean that really, it could have gone either way. Again, going back to my beginning, I was at an orphanage, right? And had I been raised in the family that I had been born into, they gave me up for adoption because I was Black.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
the bottom line. My mother's family, I didn't get to meet her. She actually committed suicide. And she didn't commit suicide until later in life. So I have two sisters that are white. We each
yeah.
had different fathers. I learned this all later, like not until almost 50 that I learned all these things. But my two sisters that stayed had a rough time, growing up there because their mother was very mentally ill. And she was depressed and she really struggled and ultimately did commit suicide. One of the sisters, found her hanging. Um, so when I heard that story, and I also, they told me very clearly, one of my aunts, that her mother forbade her to bring me home because I was Black.
Yeah.
And I was born only 6 days after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and my father was in jail. So this white family did not want me because I was Black.
Mhm.
So had I been raised in that, I can only imagine what my life would have been like. And I really do believe from a spiritual standpoint that God rescued me from that situation and put me exactly where he needed me so that I could continue to be a servant and go back and help others who maybe didn't get out, to show them the light, lead them, and let them know that there is absolutely hope at the end of the tunnel. I don't care what you've gone through. In my case, it was that I came out of an orphanage and I was adopted and I struggled with self-esteem and all those things. My whole life, that's what's so interesting to me, is that I chose a career in television as
Love this.
shy and as insecure as I was as a little girl. I don't know what I was thinking because it could not have been my own desire. That's what God said you're going to do. You're going to be on TV and you're going to be your story's going to be used to help others who need to come through a storm. You've made it, you were built to outlast this storm and you're going to help others who have gone through it. So that's my relationship with God is like I said, We have a tug of war, but I'm very because I know that it's impossible for this to have all been possible on my own.
Yeah. Now you getting the preacher side of me. I'm listening, and now the preacher side is just welling up in me. The Bible says, "Before you were born, I knew you. Before I placed you in your mother's womb, I knew what you were going to be." Another thing that really impresses me, what you said, um, about when you were 7 years old. I mean, that just intrigues me, and it's going to help somebody that's listening right now. It's going to help them with themselves. It's going to help them with their children and how they raise them. You talking about a troubled childhood in the book of Job, and everybody knows pretty much who's read anything in the Bible that Job went through some torment, lost all his family, lost all his wealth, lost everything because God wanted to make sure that he was who he said he was, and the devil came to tempt him, right? And so, but in Job 22:28, Job says this, and this is where I pick up on you. Job says this. He says, "Decree a thing, and it shall be established unto you, and the light of God's favor shall shine upon all your ways." In other words, it is, to break it down, it is what you say, what you declare will be
Mm.
done. So at 7 years old,
You
you
know what
said, "I'm
happened?
going to New York and I'm going to
Yeah.
be able to talk to her."
I
Talk to her.
didn't
I'm
know.
excited
I-
now.
Let me tell you, I didn't exactly know New York yet at 7, but what I did
Mhm,
know is I did like a play. I think it was second grade maybe, or going into second grade or something, and I played Harriet Tubman in that play.
mhm.
And that was it for me. I was like, wow, I want to do this forever. I want to do this. And I felt a little cursed at times being in Little Over Old Dover. I was like, how, God, how am I gonna go from this to being a star? I'm gonna be a star. I'm living in this little town with really strict parents. I can't do anything. But it was the grounding, the foundation that I needed. But what really changed my life was our dear alma mater,
Come on.
because I arrived at Delaware State not because I didn't grow up dreaming of going to Del State. It's what I could afford.
Yes.
I originally enlisted in the Air Force, and coming out of high school because my dad was in the Air Force. I grew up in an Air Force family, and I thought it was a way for me to make some money, see the world, and get from under my strict parents.
Yes.
And that was my goal. Like, how do I get out of here and make it on my own? And I enlisted in the Air Force. And right before I was supposed to go to boot camp, I started really thinking about it. And I thought, well, if I go in the Air Force, how am I going to get to New York and be on TV? That's just further and further away. Now someone's owning me. Nothing against the Air Force. It's an amazing career. But for me, I thought, I don't think I can do this. And so I asked them to let me out of my commitment before I went to boot camp. And the only way I could get out is if I enrolled in college. And my
Wow.
dad was basically like, I'm not paying for that. So, because I wasn't, truth be told, I wasn't the best student in high school. I struggled a little bit with a lot of things in my life growing up. Wasn't always liked. My my sisters, didn't necessarily like me because I thought I was cute. You're
Yeah.
light
Yeah.
skin and long hair. But then, the people that I was in theater with, which were almost all white, also, it's like I wasn't exactly one of them. So I didn't quite feel like I fit in. And I went to Dell State and I was scared to death because it was a sea of beautiful Black people. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't even know how
Yeah.
to dance, right? It's like,
Yeah.
how am I going to do this? And I stayed to myself. I lived off campus
Uh-huh.
and I did not know how to fit in. And I ended up having my daughter, my oldest daughter, my sophomore year in college. I had a little boyfriend. That didn't go well. I broke up with him afterwards, but I was a single mom through college. A lot of people may not know that. And I enrolled my daughter right in the daycare center at Del State. She grew up there. I went to
Mhm.
class, she went to class. And that actually, interestingly enough, in a weird way, that's how I became popular. People loved my little girl and they were like, oh my God, she's so cute. I'll babysit. And I
Wow.
started making friends on campus. That's how our family is at Del State, right?
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
became very close and I pledged Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Ooh, just a little plug there.
Little
Um,
plug. I hear you. I
and
hear you.
yeah, and things just took off. I don't know. I mean, I was able to become the assistant editor of the newspaper. I started the mass communications program there. I was the first president. I founded it. And then, I started doing like a little radio show. My friend was the head of the radio station. So I had a little radio show where I was interviewing all the rappers and stuff that came through campus to perform. And I don't know, I had professors for the first time tell me how smart I was. I never heard that in my life ever. And I had professors pull me aside, and a professor at the in the English department say, "Have you ever considered journalism?
Right.
You're an amazing writer." I had never heard that before. I knew I wrote well, but no one ever told me I was a great writer. And I started looking into it, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to be on TV, and I'd like to be a news anchor. And that's how I'm going to get to New York. And I became a news anchor, and ended up in New York, and I won Emmys, and everything took off for me. But it was all really because of the belief at our HBCU, that family there that surrounded me instead of discarding me. You know, that I was surrounded with love. I got A's.
Right.
Never got A's in high school, right? All of a
Right.
sudden I
Right.
became an A student and the teacher's pet. I was like, who am I? And it just all took off for me.
Yeah. And so one of the great things about it too is I was an English major. I played football and baseball, but I was an English major. The goal was the best laid plans of mice and men was I'm going to the pros. And it's crazy because our stories parallels well. So I'm going to the pros and I'm playing football and I'm playing baseball. And when I'm a junior, I'm ninth in the nation in stolen bases. I have the stats, I have everything. My senior year,
Wow.
I'm ready to roll, but I end up having a baby uh, in my junior year. So it was born in my senior year. And my girlfriend ran track at the time and she couldn't come back.
Mm,
So it's so when you said that, it kind of paralleled the same thing. All my classes were in the EH. So I
yeah.
had Dr. Joyce Brazier. I was the product
Yep.
manager for Three Little Pigs. Dr. King was over there. We didn't have a mass communication
Nope.
program until you came. But
Yep.
I did all of the things that you did, not
Yeah.
knowing what it was. And I'll say this to our viewers because I feel this based on our interview is with you knowing where you wanted to go and with me having an ideal and having the credentials and then we get curveballs in there. It reminds me of Genesis chapter 50 and 20 with Joseph, right?
I knew you'd bring
So
it back
right, come
home.
on, right? Come on, right?
Yeah.
So with Joseph, you got brothers that don't like him. You already said that. They can't stand him because he's the favorite child of his daddy. They throw him in the pit, leave him for dead, right? He gets picked up, taken off to Egypt, gets accused of raping a woman, get thrown into jail. But at the very end, his brothers have to come back to him because he's the second in charge in Egypt to Pharaoh. But watch this. In Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, here we go. This is for us. This is for you, everybody watching. No matter what hardship you go through, no matter what trial or test, no matter how difficult it is, Genesis 50:20 says this: what the enemy intended for harm,
Mm.
God intended for good. And watch this, and the saving of many lives. We're gonna talk about Trigg's house in a few minutes. He didn't make you go through all of that for nothing. He didn't make
No.
me go through all that for nothing, but he set us on a path. But hold on, because I know I can see it. I can see you ready to jump in. Let's do this real quick. I want to slow it down just a little bit, right? Because we're gonna get back to that. Because oh my God, oh Kathleen, you got me hyped. So we're gonna slow it down just a bit because I want to insert here. In every last one of my Hornet highlight series, what the viewers look for is this thing called little known history facts, right?
Mhm.
And so this gives me a chance. I've been retired for 11 years, right? But this gives me a chance to get back into my investigative skills. Like I said before, everybody can go on Google and find out about your Emmys and find out about what shows you were on and find out about all of those things. But I dig deep.
Uh-oh.
I find out some stuff that you can't find on Google and you won't find online. You won't find unless you have some source information. So,
I don't
with
know if I
that
should
being
be
said,
scared or excited.
no, excited. It's fun. This is fun.
Okay.
It's fun. So, we have this segment called the little known history fact that I do with each and every one of my guests. And this is kind of where I surprise them and let them know that I know a little bit about them. So let's get to it. So as I was preparing for this, Miss Kathleen, a little birdie whispered in my ear, and they informed me that back in 1992, you submitted your name to a lottery process, right? And
Uh,
you were selected to witness a Delaware state execution.
yeah,
Please tell us about that. That you know, from my background, that
yeah.
gets me hyped.
Mm. You know, that's really interesting because I had forgotten about that until a few years ago. A journalist contacted me and they were actually doing a story on, I believe it was Stephen Pinnell who was executed, if
Stephen
I'm not
Brian Pinnell.
mistaken.
That's his name.
I think.
Yep.
What was his name?
Stephen Brian Pinnell.
Yeah, you don't forget some things, right? That was such a unbelievable event, to witness. Really sad, but also it's life-changing, right? But
Mhm.
this journalist contacted me because they were doing a story on it, and I never got a chance to see the story. And I hope that it wasn't a wrongful conviction, where they were able to uncover the truth, because it would be a travesty if that was the case. But yes, I did. I was a reporter at WBOC TV, I believe, or at WAFL Radio, one or the other. I just graduated from
Yeah.
college. It was my first career job and on air. And I have to say that I was competing against Baltimore stations, Philly stations, and Delaware stations who wanted to put their name in the lottery, to
Yeah.
be one of two journalists that get to witness the execution. And then they come back and have a press conference to tell all the other stations what they witnessed. And I got that lottery. I can't say that the very seasoned journalists around me from, Philly and Baltimore and everywhere else were happy. They were like, well, how'd she get selected, right? She didn't have any experience. But God,
But
but
God.
yeah, it was a terrible circumstance, honestly, to watch somebody be put to death for murder. And I, as a journalist, that entree into this industry really changed my perspective on so many things, on life, on the justice system, on news, on humanity. And I had a chance to, first of all, when there's an execution, you have to know when you're coming up to that execution, it's not a serene setting at all. The
Right.
environment is protesters on both sides, right? So you have protesters who are very anti death penalty. And then you have
Yes.
protesters who are oftentimes victims and feel like, this person needs to be put to death. And the two sides are clashing. So you're
Right.
coming in between all of that. And as a reporter, I had to interview all these different people. And then I had to go inside and be set up to witness this execution. Um, it was horrible. It was horrible and peaceful. It's very, very quick. So it's
Right.
not it's not dramatic by any means. It might look more dramatic on the TV shows that I'm in now, a little
Yeah.
plug
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. Oh
but
yeah.
it's not that dramatic. It happens so fast. In this case, he was brought out and he was put on, I think he was already there, if I'm not mistaken. We were set in a room, there was a
Yep.
glass and there was a
Yep.
curtain.
Yep.
And so when they opened the curtain, he was already in the chair. And I believe they asked him if he had any final words. And they talked about what he ate for dinner the night before and did like a report. And
Hmm.
then, you know, they, uh, they do it, it was
Hmm.
electrocution. No, I think they did it through,
Lethal injection.
yeah, lethal injection, I believe.
Yeah.
So it happened really, really fast. Again, it wasn't something that you saw, not nearly as dramatic as you see on television. And then I had to come back out and do a whole press conference
Hmm.
and answer those questions. It changed me, Frank. It really did. I did another story though that I did do that was equally life-changing that I remember to this day was another, he was a black, that Stephen Pinnell was a white gentleman. This man was black, and his father was a preacher, and
Yeah.
he grew up in the church. And I interviewed him before he was on death row. I interviewed him before his execution, in a church. And
Yeah.
it was probably one of the best pieces of journalism I had done, but I was still pretty new. I was maybe 2 or 3 years into my job. I used that piece to sell myself to other markets so that I can move up from Delaware, which was like
Right.
market 153 or 200 and something, I don't even remember, to end up finally in New York, which is the number one market. I had to, do some work along the way. But this story was, he was a beautiful soul, and he declared his innocence till the very end. And he was, adamant that he was innocent.
Hmm.
And I can't say whether I believed him or didn't believe him. Something in my heart didn't want to believe that he was capable of murder.
Yeah.
Um, but he sang, and I started my story out with him singing.
Wow.
And I remember the line I started out saying, while he could be singing the blues, instead he's singing praises to God, believing that his life will be spared. And as he was singing in this hollow church, because it was only he and I sitting in
Right.
the pews as I interviewed him, I started my piece out with an outside shot of the prison
Hmm.
with the barbed wire, and you hear his voice, billowing out over that shot from inside in the chapel. And that's how I started it out. And I remember him. I don't really know his fate, and I can't remember his name, unfortunately, because I would love to look him up. But
Right.
again, I listen, we, as a journalist, you're supposed to stay neutral. You're not really
Yeah.
supposed to have a side. You're supposed to tell all sides and let the public, the viewers, make their decision. And that's what credibility means in journalism. It's different now, everyone's one-sided, and, as you
Yeah.
see on TV, it's hard to decipher. But those impactful moments shaped my career as a journalism and let me know the real responsibility as a journalist to tell the truth
Yeah.
and to be unfiltered in that truth, but also non-judgmental in that truth.
Absolutely. So it was tough, but it was impactful. I remember my first day reporting to my first division, Philadelphia, as an agent. The first thing that I did, just because I wanted to have that experience, I asked them where the morgue was. I went down to a morgue on Monday
Mhm.
morning. And that Monday morning in Philadelphia, Center City, there were probably 20 Afro American young Black males laid out, being getting autopsies. And it
Wow.
was just incredible to see how they opened them up and took their face off. And but just for me, it was very impactful because I was like, oh, you hear about this, you see this, but I needed that so I could do my job effectively.
Right.
One of the things and reasons why I brought up this Stephen Brian Pennell case, because it was important to me as well. It was my second year in the bureau. I live 7 miles away from where, for our viewers, this guy Stephen Brian Pennell, he was 6'5" white male, 300 pounds, 34 years old, and and I remember it well. He was deemed in the papers as a Route 40 serial killer. I lived not too far from there. So all these murders were going around, along,
Right.
right around where I lived. And I know a lot of law enforcement, so I was kind of connected to the case. So what happens is, yeah, he was guilty. He even said he was guilty.
I
He
thought
was
he admitted it, I think,
right. He did. He
yeah.
did. He was convicted of
Yeah.
two counts of first-degree murder, but he was responsible for the death of three other prostitutes that they couldn't really pin on him. But at the end, he said, "Listen, I did it, and listen, I deserve to die, and just kill me." And that was his sentiment at that time. But the background to this man was he wasn't very well adjusted in the community, right? So he didn't get along with other people. He's kind of quiet. He went for the police academy. He failed that. He became an electrician. He didn't do well at that. He was a bouncer at a club because of his stature. But he was a married father of a few children, but his marriage didn't even work. He's
Right.
very abusive. So by day he was married. At night he went out on Route 40, picked
Yeah.
up these prostitutes, and he killed them. But watch this, Kathleen. Here's the beauty of why I bring up that case. The reason why I bring up that case is because it was Delaware's first and only serial
Yeah.
killer case. We've never had another serial. So you sat and you saw that the
And
first
wasn't it
serial.
also the first execution in a really long time or something?
It was the first execution in a long time. Now there had been strings before it, and there were a few after it, and then they stopped a little right around 2002,
Mm.
2003. They stopped. But here's another one: is that it was one of the first cases in the nation that used this cutting edge technology called DNA. so
Oh,
so
okay.
so it was a first. So there again, you are right there in the midst. And
Yeah.
and I was, as I did the research, I saw there was a movie that came out or is coming out. It's called
About
How She Caught a Killer, right? And it's on
mhm.
Lifetime. and they don't use Route 40, they don't use Delaware, they don't use his name, but they talk about those things. So
And
that's
that's one of the episodes, or no?
no, it's a movie that's out now
And
on
it's called
Lifetime.
She Caught a Killer?
How She Caught a Killer.
Oh,
Came out in
well,
two.
Frank, we need to write our movie then.
Oh, oh,
I
oh,
got a lot of movies.
oh, well, we will, and it's impressive because you know, and I know how the industry works. You know firsthand by playing in some of these. Here you go. By playing in some of these series, FBI, Most Wanted. A lot of times people ask me, "Well, Frank, is that the truth? You know how they do that?" I say, "Well, let me tell you, the basis of it is true, but how they do stuff is a lot of license. Like you're not getting DNA back in an hour." You're just not doing that. You're not getting a facial rec back in an hour to find those things. But it's funny how those things go, and that's why I say I want to stay connected with you because here's the last thing before we move forward. The last thing is a very close friend of mine who was a prosecutor on a case is now the is district attorney for Delaware, is Kathleen Jennings. And she did an excellent job on that case. So I was surprised. I was surprised. Well, she's actually attorney general. I was surprised to go back and look at all of this and go, wow,
I mean, that
man.
was her case
Hmm,
back
hmm.
then when she was
Yeah, she was a prosecutor. She was a prosecutor.
oh, and now
Yeah,
she's the attorney general.
yeah, yeah. Now she's attorney
That's
general, and she's
awesome.
she doing. And I work with her now, so I do a lot of different things with her. So when I saw that, I was like,
Yeah, you reminded me of
so
things
let's.
I forgot about.
Well, that's my background. That's what I do. I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
We covered the whole issue um about having your daughter when you were 19 years old at Dell State. But I want you to emphasize something that I heard you say in another interview. When we talk about that, um, we look at your success. We've talked about that. And we know that there have been detours. That's the word that you use in one of your interviews, detours. Talk about detours. Talk about, we kind of talked about it earlier, but talk about how when unexpected things come up, turn up, how do you deal with detours and how have you dealt with detours? Not only the pregnancy, but other things, maybe even your gender, even your race in the media, because I know there's a lot behind that as well. Talk
Yeah,
about that real
all
quick.
of that. I think in general, hurdles happen in life. You have detours, and what I always say to people is you have to set your path. How you get there, you know your end goal in life. And you might have some detours, some deviations, some hills, some valleys, might even be some floods along the way.
That's right.
As long as you keep your eyes set on where you're going and you
Mhm.
keep, there's two things that so I coach. I do, coaching with people. I call it success coaching and
Yes,
life
yes,
coaching. But what I always say, and you'd be surprised, even the most senior CEOs sometimes need a coach, somebody that can help them just realize who they are, how they got here, and where they're going. Because we all still, as long as you're still opening your eyes every day, you still should have goals and a goal,
yes,
right? Or otherwise, what are you doing in life? For me, I called it dreams. When I was growing up, um, I use the example with a lot of people. There was one of my favorite songs. I was a little ahead of my time, but Nancy Wilson. She came to Dell State when I was a student there, and I had the honor of interviewing her and watching her live performance. And she had this song with Cannonball Adderley. You can look it up. It's called. It says, "You got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how are you going to make a dream come true?"
yes,
And I
yes.
tell that's the simplest thing in life. It's the simplest thing, but it's so true. If you
Right.
stop dreaming, what are you even doing? Because if you don't have a dream of where you could be, then that means you're stagnant. You're staying in this little box that you've created. There is no box, there's no deadlines, there's nothing. This is your life. There's no rule book, there's no playbook, there's no cage. It's your life. And as long as you dream and you have your eyes set on whatever that goal is that you set for yourself, you can't allow yourself to worry about the little twists and turns along the way. In fact, every one of them is a lesson. It's a stepping stone. It's a new meeting. It's a new contact. It's a new bridge. It's something that's helping you get there. And as long as you stay positive and you see it as that, You can always still keep going. It's when you suddenly wallow in it and become the victim and you're like, oh, well, I wanted to do this, but I had a child in college and now
Yep.
I'll never be anything. Well, I don't know about you. You cannot be anything if you want. You stay right there, but hold my coffee and I'll be right back
That's
because
right.
I'm going over here, to be successful. When I come back, if you're still holding it, maybe
Yes.
I'll bring you along. There's no such thing as failure. It's yes, detours happen along the way. So what I
Yeah.
was going to say though, in my coaching, I tell people there's the two most valuable things I suggest everyone get from childhood all the way through adults and just keep replenishing them. You want to know what it is?
Talk to me.
All right. Earplugs and blinders.
Wow. Block it out.
Tell me, you know why, Pastor?
Block it out.
All right. You got to block out that noise
Hmm.
of the naysayers, including well-intentioned family members who
Yes.
just don't really get you. It's not their dream. So how could
Hmm.
they possibly make your dream come true?
Mm.
It's not their dream. And
Mm.
you're going to them asking for a permission and advice. They can't get down with you because they are not in your dreams. They don't even know what you're
Mm.
talking about. I wanted to be on TV at 7. No one in my town was on TV. I didn't know a celebrity, never saw a celebrity in my life, and neither did my parents. My parents
Wow.
didn't graduate college. I'm the first college graduate in my family, right? So, but I had a dream. I couldn't ask my parents, should I go to college? My dad was like, how much does it cost? He
Hmm.
wasn't
Hmm.
thinking about where I wanted to go. I had to make that decision and I had to find a way. That was my dream. And the blinders you need so that you can stay focused. So it's the earplugs to block out the noise and the blinders so you can stay laser focused on where you're going. Stop asking people for permission. You
Yeah.
know what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I say, and it's crazy that you said that, Kathleen, is when you're talking about the blinders and the earplugs. And a lot of times when I preach, I'm not one of those traditional preachers. I'm a teacher and I like to make it plain. So I say, I'm going to break it down to you like a 2-year old, right? So one of the things how I say that what you just said, I bring it back to especially women can understand this. Think about this. You just asked me some questions. I'm gonna ask you some questions. Think
Okay.
about this. When you had your children, right?
Yeah.
And you went to the emergency room and you went to the delivery, not the emergency, but you went to the delivery room and you
Yeah.
were ready to deliver. Who was in the room, starting with your oldest to the youngest, because it changed. I know because I have 4. But who was in the delivery room with you during those times with your children?
In addition to the doctor.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I had two doctors because my husband's a doctor, so he was there with me. With my oldest one, though, interestingly enough, I had her at Dover Air Force Base, and my mom was there with me. I didn't know I was in labor. I was 5 weeks early, and I didn't know anything about children, nothing about nothing. I was 19,
Right,
and when I went into labor, I thought they were going to send me home. Instead, they were like, "Honey, you're about to go. Like you're here. You're not going anywhere." And I had her real quick, and my mom was there, and
right,
that really was helpful because I can't say my parents were happy that I was a young, unwed, pregnant,
right,
teenager, right? From a very Southern Baptist, mom. But she bonded with my daughter immediately, and they've had a bond that's just unbreakable since. So that was my oldest. With my younger two, and I have a stepson in between. My younger two, though, my husband was in the room, and my oldest was in the room. My oldest
right,
daughter was in the room
right.
with them. Yep.
So in that room, most of the time you had 1 or 2, right? Normally no more than 2. Watch this. You have when you're pregnant and you have your baby shower, and everybody, you got all these people coming and they give you all these gifts and they give you all this advice. Only 2 people can go into the room with you. You want to know why? Because you got to be careful what you share, who you share your dreams with, because
Mm,
those people can contaminate what you
mm,
just said, your
mm.
dream. Simply meaning, if I have Aunt Mimi and them and Uncle Jojo and them all in the delivery room, when they pull out that epidural and they start talking about, well, when we put this in, it may cause paralysis. And oh no, don't put it in. No, you don't need confusion, right?
Yeah,
It's the most sacred part of your life that only 2 people get to witness besides the doctor,
that's
because you
true.
can't watch this. Thank you, God. You can't have everybody with you, Kathleen, when you're about to give birth. When you're
Mm,
about to give birth to your dream, you can't have everybody pitching in. It's not their dream. You said it.
yeah.
When I became a pastor, when I became an apostle, God bless my mom's soul. She's gone, and my dad. I had to tell my mom it's not your ministry. Well, Frankie, you should do it. Frankie, mom, I love you dearly, but it's not your ministry. So that is the most sacred time where you don't want everybody in there. You can't share people. You can't share your dream with everyone because they may contaminate it.
Yeah.
See,
And can I double down on that?
double down.
One thing I also talk about is how we enter and how we leave this earth. You come in, by yourself, and you're going to leave this earth. I don't care how much you love
Yes,
everybody.
ma'am.
You cannot take a friend with you on your way out.
Nope.
It's not a 2 for 1. Like, oh, Frank, I'm going tomorrow. Like, can you come with me? You're like,
Nope.
nah, Cat. Sorry, you're on your own this time. I can't think of a friend that would go with me on to the other side. So, you cannot spend your life worrying about other people's opinion, because you're going to leave this earth one day, and only you are going to be accountable for what you did during your time here. Only you. And you've got to make it meaningful, and you've got to make it, you got to do as much as you can to leave this earth in a better place than you found it.
Absolutely. Kathleen, listen, I am having a ball. The viewers, we are having a ball right now. But for the sake of time, I know we got to probably wind this down. I'm feeling like I'm just having a conversation with you in your room.
Uh,
But we're gonna wind down with these final two questions.
okay.
Talk about your passions, and your passions include the Trigg House. Oh my God, I did a lot of research. Talk to the viewers about the Trigg House, but before you do that, kind of mentioned them earlier. Talk about that husband of yours and those children. You got to talk about them.
Yeah, my children are my world. They
Mhm.
really are. I take parenting, motherhood very seriously, because I do believe that God has blessed me to be their mother. And sometimes I question why. I'm like, God, like they're difficult. Like, could you have given me like a easier bunch? But God, really has made it very clear to me that he placed me in this family for a reason, and my children needed me as much as I've needed them. I love them so much, and they've made me the person that I am. I love being a mother. I do. And my husband, we've been married. We lose count, but I think it's 25 years this year, maybe 1999. Is that 20? We're 2024. Yeah, so we're going on
Yes,
25
yes,
years
yes, yes,
married.
yes.
He's a plastic surgeon, and when we got married, when we got engaged, I was a news anchor down in Norfolk, Virginia, 5 o'clock anchor, and he was finishing his residency in New York City. And we kind of, said to each other, all right, so who's moving? And it was a
Mm,
super easy decision, one, because I always wanted to live in New York. So I was like, all right, God, I think these are like my steps that you're ordering, if there's such a thing. But then also it was like, all right, who can make the most money? Norfolk, Virginia versus New York. I was like, I'll be in New York. No, no,
yes,
no
yes.
worries, right? Quadrupled my salary when I, moved to New York and became a news anchor, a 10 o'clock news anchor, weekend anchor, starting out
Hmm.
in New York City in 99. So I thank him for a lot. We now actually work together. Where I am right now is a studio that I own. His plastic surgery practice is actually on the first floor in this building.
Nice,
Studio
nice,
is on the fourth floor.
nice.
So we've built, a business together. We built a family together. We came into the marriage each with a child, so an
Hmm.
instant family, and then we had our two younger ones together. Really blessing. Now, Trigg House is when my parents adopted me, and they are my parents. Some people say, "You mean your adopted parents?" No, they're my parents. They've loved me. They've given me everything that they have. But the two most valuable things I say that they started out giving me was their house
Yes.
and name. And so my
Mm,
foundation I named Trigg House, to give other young women and men aging out of the foster care system a place to call home, because that's what my parents gave to me. And it was the most valuable gift that anyone could have given me, or that you could ever give a child coming out of the system, is
yes.
two things. Because um, that is so powerful, so profound, when you can give someone your heart, your house, your home. And for these other young women, what I'd like to do is be an impact in their life. I want them to realize that, they have someone who loves them. They have someone who cares about them, somebody that has been through it. I didn't live my whole life in the system, thank God. But I did go through enough trauma at a very young age that I know what it feels like. And more importantly, I felt like I didn't always know why God saved me. Why did he spare my life? Because some people who were left at the orphanage that I was left at, some people never got out of there. They spent their entire life there, and they were raised there, and it's the only life they've ever known. I was very blessed. I got out of that system and I went on, to do amazing things as a result. But I also will never forget that that's where I started. And I'll never stop wanting to help those who need to see that there is a possibility of success on the other side if you can just have that dream.
Jesus.
So,
Jesus. Kathleen, so as I wind down and we finish up this interview, one of the things that I talk about as a pastor for 21 years and in ministry for 29 years, one of the most challenging questions for people
mhm,
is something that's so simplistic. Just walk up to somebody and say, "What's your ministry?" And they look and they go, and I say this, your ministry is the thing that you've been affected by the most,
right.
the thing that you would not want anybody else to go through that you've gone through,
Yep.
the thing that if you could help somebody navigate that thing easier, you would do it. Your ministry is the Trigg House. God has called you for that. So I am so pleased with what you do. I'm so
And let
happy
me
that go ahead.
Pastor, if I could, I didn't actually say, if you don't mind me giving a
No,
little bit
no, go ahead.
of
Take your
accounts,
time.
yeah, because now that you said that, I do feel called to lead and to make a really big impact on this earth while I'm here, a legacy that of giving and helping others. Again, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yes, ma'am.
Trigg House is a not-for-profit 501(c)(3). I started back in 2006 or 8. Um,
Mhm.
and the goal really is to help these young women, especially I focus on women right now, help them with life skills, help them uh, with decision making, give them job skills. I'm bringing them into my production company, teaching them how to
Yes.
produce, how to write, how to get some skills, because we are going to take care of these young people one way or another, either in the criminal justice system,
Come on.
or we're going to take care of them so that we can actually put our head on a pillow at night and just feel amazing when we see them soaring through life because of the gift of just caring that we can give them. So anyone who wants to get involved in any way, it's trigghouse.org, Trigg, Trigg, house.org. I'd love to have your support in any way. And if nothing else, just continue to pray for me and pray for them. The world needs healing right now.
Amen. And I'm going to be there. I love your transparency. I love your candor. And as I'm listening to you, it's very admirable the way that you use your experience and your skills to help others manifest their giftings. I'm glad we talked about that. So is there anything else that we missed, or is there anything else that you would like to add um, to close out the interview?
Yeah, I'd love to just ask for all of you to support me. When people are entrepreneurs, people are business owners. When I was a news anchor, it was easy. I was on TV every night. Everybody was like, oh, and I made money. I made a salary. When you're running your own business, it's a whole different beast. You've got to keep the
Yep.
lights on. I've got to not
Yes.
only keep my lights on, but I got to keep food on every one of my employees' tables at night.
Yes.
So if you could support iWoman TV, it's iwoman.tv is our website. If you want if you have a show, just want to watch some good shows, you want to reach out, anything that you can do to support us as we're trying to continue to build this movement of empowerment for young women and girls. God knows our girls need all the support that they can get right now. And I'm here for it. I'm really trying to change the world for women and girls. So I'd love for all of you and men, because there would be no us if it wasn't for you. So we don't
That's right.
discriminate. We welcome, anyone who wants to see women get to a better place and support us and help us get there. So please support me and let me know how I can continue to be a blessing in your lives as well.
Amen. And to add to that, Kathleen, I know you're very active on social media. If you'd like to let everybody know where they can find you on your social media, and what I'll do is I'll paste the links in the
Sure.
descriptions below as well.
Make sure you follow me. I'll follow you back. I'm really good at that. I believe it takes a village and of people supporting, good people supporting good people. How about that? LinkedIn, I'm Cathleen Trigg-Jones. No S on Trigg. Sometimes people try to put the S, but it's just Trigg, Cathleen Trigg-Jones. On Instagram, it's Cat Trigg, Cattrigg. Cat's my nickname. And then you can just find me as Cathleen Trigg or Cathleen Trigg-Jones on Facebook and TikTok and all those other things.
Amen. Well, Miss Cat, as you said, it was a pleasure for you to spend time with Hornet Highlight Series this evening. I pray that God will continue to richly bless you and that He gives you continued success and that He gives you the strength to finish what you've started. You are an amazing young woman and full of blessings. I pray that God will bless you with everything that you put your hands to do, that He will bless it. Thank you for joining us this evening on Hornet Highlight Series. Appreciate you.